Radical responsibility begins the moment you stop waiting for someone else to validate your potential. It's the recognition that your life is shaped not by outside forces, but by the choices you make every single day. When you decide to take ownership of everything in your life, the victories, the failures, the delays, the opportunities, you step into a level of power most people never tap into. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's a gateway to freedom. Most people spend years trapped in cycles of blame, pointing at circumstances, people, or the past as the reasons they're not further ahead. But blame is a cage. As long as you blame anything outside yourself, you give away the authority to change your situation. Radical responsibility means reclaiming that authority, taking it back from everything you once thought controlled you. It requires honesty, sometimes uncomfortable honesty, about the decisions that led you to where you are right now. Not to shame yourself, but to reveal the truth. Because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. When you see the truth clearly, you gain the power to redirect your life consciously instead of drifting unconsciously. Radical responsibility also means accepting that no one is obligated to save you. Help is a blessing when it comes, but it is not a strategy. Counting on someone else to build the life you want puts your future in hands that were never responsible for it. Your journey becomes stronger the moment you decide that your progress is your duty, not someone else's assignment. In this mindset, problems transform into possibilities. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what can I do right now to change this situation? That shift alone separates passive learners from empowered creators. Responsibility turns setbacks into data points, not dead ends. It also forces you to confront the habits you've been protecting. Procrastination, excuses, self-doubt. These things thrive when responsibility is low. But when responsibility is high, those habits can no longer hide. You begin to replace them with discipline, clarity, and intentional action. Your energy shifts because your ownership shifts. Radical responsibility elevates your standards. You stop tolerating behaviors, environments, and mindsets that keep you small. You begin holding yourself to expectations that reflect who you are becoming instead of who you used to be. That internal elevation changes how you show up in your relationships, your work, your goals, and your daily routines. It also means no longer outsourcing your confidence. Instead of waiting for approval, you approve your own effort. Instead of waiting for encouragement, you encourage yourself. Instead of waiting for direction, you choose a path and walk it. Confidence grows when responsibility grows because you learn to trust your own decisions. Taking this kind of responsibility empowers you to see possibilities where others see limitations. You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start creating momentum with what you have. You realize that progress is not a matter of access, but a matter of initiative. The moment you move, circumstances begin to respond. It makes your vision sharper. When you take responsibility for your life, you stop being distracted by the noise of other people's opinions. You start focusing on what you're building, not what others are thinking. Your goals become clearer because you're no longer waiting for someone else to define them for you. Radical responsibility also strengthens your resilience. When you stop expecting rescue, you start cultivating resourcefulness. You learn how capable you actually are when pressure comes. You learn how to solve problems instead of escaping them. And you discover strength within yourself you never knew you had. It creates emotional maturity. You stop reacting to life and start responding to it. You stop letting small frustrations derail you. You stop letting other people's behavior dictate your mood. Responsibility shifts you from emotional dependence to emotional leadership. It expands your sense of possibility. When you realize you are the architect of your own future, limitations stop looking absolute. Obstacles stop looking final. You start seeing opportunities that were invisible before because your mindset is no longer passive. It is active, intentional, and forward-moving. It builds integrity with yourself. Every time you take responsibility and follow through, you prove something to yourself, that your word matters, that your actions align with your intentions, and that you can trust yourself to show up. That internal trust becomes the foundation for long-term growth. And ultimately, radical responsibility transforms your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits and start seeing yourself as someone who acts. You stop seeing yourself as someone affected by life and start seeing yourself as someone directing life. You become the kind of person who moves with purpose, who stands in strength, and who takes full ownership of the life you are creating. Activating your inner capacity begins with recognizing that you are already equipped with far more potential than you've allowed yourself to access. Most people move through life believing they need more time, more resources, or more support before they can start pursuing their goals. But the truth is, the power you're waiting for is the power you already possess. It sits dormant not because it's missing, but because it hasn't been awakened. Inside every person is the ability to grow, to adapt, to create, and to rise. Yet so many underestimate themselves because they only measure what they can see. They look at their current skills, current circumstances, or current results and assume that represents their limits. But your inner capacity isn't visible until you start pulling on it. Strength doesn't reveal itself until it's tested, and capability doesn't appear until it's demanded. Activating that capacity means leaning into discomfort with intentionality. Growth never comes from environments that keep you safe, quiet, or still. It comes from situations that stretch your thinking, challenge your habits, and expose you to new levels of responsibility. The more you stretch, the more potential you uncover. The more you challenge yourself, the more talent rises to the surface. It requires breaking the mindset that someone else holds the key to your next level. No coach, no mentor, no opportunity can replace what you must unlock within yourself. External guidance can point you in the right direction, but only your own initiative can move you forward. When you realize the journey is powered internally, you stop begging life for openings and start creating them. Activating your inner capacity also means refusing to be defined by your past experiences. What you've walked through may have shaped you, but it does not confine you. Your past reveals where you've been, not who you're capable of becoming. Capacity lives in your future, not your history. And every time you choose possibility over memory, you expand your personal power. There is a hidden reservoir of strength that only appears when you push beyond your familiar limits. Most people never discover it because they stop at the boundary of discomfort. But the moment you push even one step past what feels easy, you tap into a deeper layer of ability. Every breakthrough in life begins with that. One step into the unknown. This inner capacity grows when you treat challenges as invitations rather than interruptions. Instead of shrinking from the hard things, you lean into them with curiosity, knowing they carry the seeds of new skills and new confidence. Every challenge has the potential to unlock another dimension of who you are. The people who grow the fastest are those who see problems as pathways, not prisons. It also requires trusting your own intuition. You possess insights, perspectives, and instincts that are uniquely yours. When you silence them in favor of external noise, you weaken your own direction. But when you honor them, you strengthen your decision-making, your creativity, and your sense of purpose. Your inner voice becomes clearer the more you respect it. Activating your capacity means refusing to operate below your potential. It means identifying the areas of your life where you've accepted mediocrity and choosing to raise the bar. It means recognizing the goals you've downsized out of fear and choosing to pursue them boldly. The moment you stop shrinking your dreams to match your doubts, your capacity begins to expand. Your inner capacity thrives on consistency. The more consistently you show up, the more naturally you grow. Every small action compounds into greater strength. Every repeated effort sharpens your abilities. Capacity isn't built in explosive moments, it's built in steady, intentional steps. And each step increases what you are capable of executing tomorrow. It also demands that you stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a myth that convinces people to stand still. But capacity grows in motion, not hesitation. When you move forward, even while uncertain, you unlock skills and resilience that clarity alone could never provide. Movement activates capability. This activation requires courage, not the absence of fear, but willingness to move despite it. Fear is often a sign that you're standing on the edge of growth. When you push through it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the barriers you imagined. And each time you choose courage, your capacity multiplies. It means shifting from self-protection to self-expansion. When you protect yourself, you avoid risk. When you expand yourself, you embrace opportunity. Expansion requires vulnerability, transparency, and willingness to grow beyond what feels familiar. But on the other side of that stretch is a version of yourself stronger and more capable than the one before. This process deepens your belief in yourself. As you activate more of your capacity, you start realizing how much potential has been waiting for your permission. Confidence doesn't come from achievement alone. It comes from witnessing your own ability to rise, to adapt, and to endure. Each activation strengthens your sense of identity. Ultimately, accessing your inner capacity allows you to live life as a creator, not a spectator. You stop waiting for momentum and start generating it. You stop assuming life happens to you and start recognizing that life responds to you. Capacity is not something given to you. It is something drawn out of you through intention, action, and unwavering belief in what you're capable of becoming. Activating your inner capacity begins with recognizing that everything you need to rise already exists within you. Most people underestimate the power they carry because they've been conditioned to look outward instead of inward. They search for answers in mentors, books, systems, or opportunities, not realizing those tools only work when the internal engine is turned on. Your internal capacity is potential waiting for permission to express itself. When you stop waiting for someone to spark your greatness, you discover that your greatest breakthroughs come from within. The courage you think you lack is already there. The ideas you believe are missing are already forming. The strength you assume is far away is already present. The moment you activate it, your entire life begins to shift because you stop operating from deficiency and start operating from abundance already inside you. This activation requires honesty about how often you've relied on external motivation to keep going. External encouragement is helpful but temporary. It fades, and when it fades, people often collapse back into old habits. But when motivation comes from within, it becomes self-renewing. You no longer need someone to push you. You start pushing yourself because your purpose becomes your fuel. Activating your inner capacity also means giving your potential space to breathe. You may have instincts, ideas, or talents that you've suppressed because you fear judgment or failure. But those suppressed parts of yourself are not mistakes. They are signals of who you are meant to be. When you allow them to come alive, you unlock abilities you didn't know you possessed. Many people wait for clarity before taking action, not realizing clarity often comes from action. Your capacity grows when used, not when studied from a distance. Every step forward expands your understanding, refines your skills, and deepens your confidence. Capacity is not a static trait. It is elastic and grows in proportion to your willingness to stretch. To activate your capacity, you must abandon the belief that you are missing something essential. You are not incomplete. You may lack experience, but you do not lack capability. You may lack direction, but you do not lack potential. You may lack results, but you do not lack power. Activation begins with shifting from a mindset of inadequacy to a mindset of inherent ability. This shift changes the way you interpret challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as signs that you're not ready, you begin to see them as opportunities to strengthen the capacity that lies dormant within you. Challenges become workouts for your character, your confidence, and your resilience. They refine your greatness instead of denying it. Activating your capacity also requires you to separate your identity from your past performance. You may not have shown your full strength yet, but that does not define who you are. It only defines who you've been up to this point. Your potential is not limited by your history. It is limited only by your willingness to unlock it. When you embrace this perspective, you begin to act from your future instead of from your past. You make decisions based on the person you are becoming, not the person you once were. This forward-focused mindset forces your capacity to rise because it can no longer hide behind old narratives or outdated beliefs. You stop waiting for perfect conditions because you realize perfection is a myth that keeps capacity trapped. You begin working with what you have, trusting that movement multiplies your ability. The more you act, the more capable you become. The more capable you become, the more opportunities appear. You also begin to trust your intuition. The quiet ideas that surface in moments of stillness are often indicators of the direction your capacity wants to grow. When you listen to them, instead of dismissing them, you allow your inner guidance to shape your external actions. This alignment strengthens your ability to move with conviction. Activating your capacity means taking responsibility for your gifts. Talent is not a trophy, it is a tool meant to be used. Your abilities are not accidents, they are assignments. When you stop ignoring or minimizing them, you step into a level of personal power that transforms your entity, your decisions, and your destiny. It also requires consistency, not intensity. Capacity is built through repeated effort, not occasional bursts. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you expand the boundaries of what you can handle. Every disciplined choice is a signal to your subconscious that you are becoming a stronger, more capable version of yourself. As your capacity grows, so does your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who can handle more, achieve more, and contribute more. This transformation becomes the foundation for everything else you build in your life. Because once you activate your inner power, external barriers lose their ability to control your direction. Eventually, you realize that activating your inner capacity is not a one-time event, but a lifestyle. It is a decision you make daily, a decision to rise, to stretch, to believe, and to step boldly into the person you were created to be. Drawing a line between who you used to be and who you are becoming is one of the most defining acts of personal transformation. Many people stay trapped in old patterns because they never make a deliberate decision to leave them behind. They drift in and out of change without ever committing. But true growth requires a moment of clarity where you decide that the old version of yourself no longer has permission to guide your life. This line is not drawn in public, it is drawn internally. It is a private declaration that something has shifted. The habits you once tolerated, the excuses you once entertained, and the patterns you once repeated are no longer acceptable. This internal separation is where transformation truly begins, because identity always shapes behavior. As long as you see yourself through the lens of your past, you will repeat your past. But when you begin to see yourself through the lens of your future, your start aligning with the person you are becoming. Drawing this line is how you stop recycling old cycles and start writing a new story. Making this separation requires courage. The old version of you may feel familiar, comfortable, predictable, but comfort is not the same as purpose. Growth demands discomfort, because expansion requires you to step into unfamiliar territory. When you draw the line, you choose growth over comfort, purpose over familiarity. This line also represents the moment you stop negotiating with limiting beliefs. You stop allowing fear to speak louder than potential. You stop letting insecurity override vision. You stop giving your old identity the authority to dictate your future. Instead, you begin to act from a place of intention, clarity, and self-respect. Drawing this line also means redefining the standards you live by. You begin to raise your expectations for how you think, how you work, how you treat yourself, and how you show up in the world. You refuse to settle for behaviors that undermine your potential. Your standards become a reflection of the future you are aligning with. As you draw the line, you will feel the tension between your old self and your new self. That tension is proof of growth, not failure. It means your identity is shifting. The habits that once felt normal now feel uncomfortable, and the habits that once felt impossible now feel necessary. This tension is the birthplace of lasting transformation. You will also notice that your environment starts to shift. People who were comfortable with your old version may not understand the new one. Some may resist your growth because it challenges their own comfort. But drawing the line requires you to choose your destiny over other people's opinions. Growth does not require permission. This internal separation creates space for new behaviors to take root. You begin to build routines that support your purpose instead of routines that distract you from it. You start prioritizing what truly matters. You see time differently. You see effort differently. You see yourself differently. Drawing the line also means taking full responsibility for your evolution. You stop waiting for external change and start creating internal change. You stop waiting for better circumstances and start becoming the person who can thrive in any circumstance. You stop allowing your past to be a prison and start allowing it to become a reference point for how far you are willing to go. This decision reshapes your self-image. You begin to see yourself as someone capable of discipline, consistency, and growth. The more you act from this new identity, the stronger it becomes. Your identity shifts from something you inherited to something you intentionally designed. As this transformation deepens, your vision becomes clearer. When the old version of you no longer has a seat at the table, your future begins to speak more loudly. You start dreaming bigger, planning more boldly, and acting with greater confidence. The line you drew becomes a doorway to a new level of living. You start experiencing breakthroughs because you've removed the internal conflicts that used to hold you back. You're no longer torn between who you were and who you want to be. You have chosen a direction, and that clarity gives you momentum. Progress accelerates when your identity and your actions finally match. The separation also empowers you to protect your growth. You become more aware of what distracts you, what drains you, and what derails you. You develop boundaries that support your transformation instead of sabotaging it. You no longer tolerate the internal and external patterns that once kept you small. Drawing a line between your old self and your future self is not about rejecting your past. It is about refusing to be limited by it. It is the moment you step into a higher version of yourself, guided by purpose, strengthened by clarity, and committed to becoming the person you were meant to be. Taking immediate purpose-driven action begins with understanding that movement itself is a form of clarity. Most people sit still waiting for certainty before they act, not realizing certainty is created by acting. The moment you move towards something with intention, you start learning what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change. And that information becomes the foundation of your momentum. Purpose-driven action isn't about rushing or panicking. It's about aligning what you do with who you want to become. When your actions are rooted in purpose, even small steps carry weight. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter, and you start channeling your time toward things that actually shape your future. That shift transforms your days from reactive to strategic. Immediate action eliminates the illusion of tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't promised, and it isn't guaranteed to be better than today. When you understand that, you no longer postpone the work that matters. You stop assuming a better mood, a better opportunity, or a better season is coming to rescue your dreams. You begin building from this moment with what you have where you are. Purpose-driven action forces you to take responsibility for your direction. It removes the luxury of waiting for motivation or inspiration. You don't need to feel ready to do what must be done. You simply need to move. And with every move, your confidence grows. Not because everything is easy, but because you prove to yourself that you can follow through. Action also interrupts fear. Fear thrives in silence and hesitation and overthinking. The longer you sit still, the louder fear becomes. But the moment, you start moving, fear loses its power because it can no longer anchor you. You replace imagined obstacles with real progress, replacing uncertainty with evidence of your own capability. Immediate action gives you control over your time. Instead of drifting through your days hoping something changes, you shape them with intention. You establish priorities instead of reacting to distractions. You make progress in areas that build your future instead of pouring energy into tasks that keep you stuck. The way you manage your time becomes the way you manage your life. When you act with purpose, discipline becomes natural. You no longer rely on willpower alone, you rely on alignment. When your actions are tied to a future you truly desire, consistency feels more meaningful. You're no longer forcing yourself to move. You're moving because you've decided your future is worth the work required to reach it. Taking action also builds identity. Every choice you make is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you act boldly, intentionally, and immediately, you reinforce the identity of someone who executes, someone who follows through, someone who honors their goals. Eventually, that identity becomes stronger than your excuses. Purpose-driven action eliminates the trap of perfection. Perfection convinces you that your first step needs to be flawless before you take it, but action teaches you that progress is messy, imperfect, and alive. You evolve as you move, you improve as you do. You grow by engaging, not by waiting for an ideal scenario that will never arrive. Immediate action brings opportunities closer. When you move, new pathways appear that were invisible before. You meet people you would never met, gain insights you would have never discovered, and create momentum that attracts the resources you once lacked. Opportunities rarely show up for the still, they Eat the ones who are already walking. Purpose-driven action also strengthens your resilience. When you train yourself to move despite challenges, you become harder to discourage. Obstacles stop feeling like signs to quit and start feeling like parts of the process. You learn to adjust without abandoning your purpose, to pivot without losing your direction, and to push through without losing your identity. Taking action removes emotional stagnation. When you remain inactive, frustration builds, regret grows, and self-doubt multiplies. But when you move, even slowly, you regain emotional control. Action increases hope because hope grows where effort is present. Your energy rises, your perspective widens, and your belief strengthens because you're actively participating in your own progress. When you act immediately, you eliminate the space where excuses live. Excuses thrive in delay. They need time to convince you that you aren't capable, that you aren't ready, or that you'll start later. But when you act now, you shut down that voice before it gains strength. You create a habit of execution that becomes stronger than any reason to hesitate. Purpose-driven action builds internal momentum that compounds over time. One step leads to another, one win fuels the next. And one breakthrough opens doors to bigger breakthroughs. Soon, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable, and what once felt impossible begins to look inevitable. Momentum is built, not wished for. Finally, immediate action transforms potential into reality. Potential is valuable, but without action, it dies unused. Action breathes life into ideas, gives substance to dreams, and turns desire into tangible results. When you choose to act with purpose and urgency, you stop being someone who waits for change and become someone who creates it.